so you should get a
Okay.
notification, and then I'll do a quick intro and throw it over to Bear to start the conversation. Stoked to just have a fantastic convo with you, Moshi. I feel like I know you as a brother already, just because I know you're tight with Topher, and I've had uh, the pleasant experience of hanging with him and his beautiful family for a week in Mexico last year. And
Yeah.
so it's and then I've just watched a bunch, you've been on with Chance a bunch, who's a homie who's come out and we've hung out in person. And of course you were on with my good friend Alex Zach. Yeah, we're all in the family here. It's gonna be a good one.
Amazing. I love it. I truly love it.
Hey,
Okay.
Moshi, what part of the world are you in? Are you in Canada?
I'm from Canada, but I'm living in East Tennessee in the Smokies, not far from Johnson
Okay.
City.
I was going to say, you're in the 51st state if you're up in Canada there, I
I know.
understand.
It's funny. I've been calling Canada the 51st state for probably over 20 years, just for shits and giggles. But here we go. Here comes
Well,
the Amero. Hopefully
well,
not.
yeah, exactly. Well, in reality, Canada as well as the US is still a colony. So
Yeah,
that's
but
another
the
discussion, right?
well, I thought America had its civil war and that broke from the crown, but the
Oh
Canada
no.
hasn't
No, we're still a
Uh,
colony.
secretly.
okay, I'm gonna hit
Yeah.
record, y'all. Here we go for the officialdom. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us in the chat. Love you. We sound good. Give us a thumbs up. You guys sound good to me, and I always sound good. So here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the gallant Dr. Bear Paul
Ooh,
Lando.
gallant, a new superlative.
Knights of the Round Table, here we
I
are.
like that one.
As we're coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme up here on the beautiful Smith River. It's a cloudless azure sky, frosty morning as they continue to dry us out. We haven't had any precipitation for a number of weeks. I keep looking at the forecast and trying to bring the elementals of rain here because, well, quite frankly, I want more snow, Bear. We're kind
Well,
of
the good news is day before yesterday they chemtrailed the bejesus out of us. Um,
I like how you have the glass half full there. The good news. Continue.
exactly. So, yeah, that's big in the news and great. With all the fog, that's appearing and making people sick. We talk about this all the time. Here we notice that, and we're out in the freaking wilderness, and they chemtrail us right before the rain starts, and then the rain brings it down. Everybody gets sick, so it's kind of like they use the rain here instead of creating fake fog elsewhere. But we've had all this crazy unseasonal river fog the last few days, which has also given some symptoms to certain people. Last thing I'll say, and then Mike, you take it away. I'll be on with our good friend John Nolan on the Inspire Network, and we're going to go over not just the fact that they're doing all this stuff that everybody knows, they're doing. That's no news, but we're going to go at it more from a solution as far as how do you keep this crud, whatever it is, moving through your bodies so that you don't have any long-term effects. So,
Beautiful. Well,
Moshi, awesome, awesome. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. This is going to be totally cool. Mike, take it away, buddy.
yeah, I was just gonna say I'm enjoying a warm cup of our immortality tea with our Jiao Gulan that we grow, which is helps with that chemtrail cough if you have it. And Bear, I understand we will be having a new tea lineup. I've been hit up
Totally
by
new.
my brother-in-law, by different folks. What's up with the teas? So keep an eye out for that, guys. We got
They're
all
going to
new teas
be
coming.
better, more functional, in-house blends, better than ever. So that's our infomercial for the day.
Well, today we're going to go deep with our new friend, Dr. Moshe Daniel Block, and we're calling this "Using God's Technology," which is what is a phenomenal solution moving forward. Just thinking of the LA fires and all the sort of collapse we're seeing in the world, a lot of that relates to the fact that we've been sold on this destructive explosion, combustion technology. And there's really, that's not in alignment with nature and with the creator. And so we're going to go deep into that and all sorts of topics today. Joe, an inventor from down under and innovator of the Joe cell, is a very special individual who was divinely inspired to build devices, cells, to experiment with water. Most noted was his cell integrated with the internal combustion engine, in which he introduced a new energy concept to generate power. Joe admonished that his inventions could not be understood within the context of conventional atomic theory, and also required a knowledge of water as a conduit for informational fields. This, of course, challenged the sacred cows of science, but also revealed God's elegant design that can be applied for the production of renewable energy, water purification systems, and even the healing of human biology. Quote, "We just haven't figured out how God works," according to Joe. Well, Moshe Daniel Block joins this Alfacast for an in-depth exploration of the science behind the Joe cell and to introduce our audience to his own technology as a further evolution of the original Joe cell. Dr. Moshe Daniel Block, ND, VDP, HMC, VNMI, is a
And
naturopathic.
BMF. Bad mofo.
Bad mofo. BFF.
There we go.
We're all BFFs now. I love it.
There you go.
He's a naturopathic doctor, author, and innovator in mind-body medicine who graduated from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in 2000. He created and teaches the Vis Dialogue, a transformative mind-body healing technique that has helped thousands achieve life-changing results, and offers a full certification program in holistic counseling. Having overcome myasthenia, gravis, if I said that correctly, with the medicine he practices, Dr. Moshi also provides personal healing programs for chronic illness and emotional suffering. Our discussion on Joe cell science will necessarily take us down a few esoteric rabbit holes, including Russellian science, Steiner anthroposophical concepts, and a bit of alchemical perspectives to round out the mix. These seemingly diverse topics will figure prominently into the reality of quote-unquote free energy and the cessation of archaic one-way explosion technologies. Visit dr-moshi.com to get more information on our guest. And he also has holistic-counseling.ca. All those links are in the show notes below. Take it away, Dr. Lando.
Dr. Moshi, this is going to be way too much fun today. Thanks for being with us, buddy.
My pleasure. My honor. Having fun already.
Right on. So, yeah, we just want to get into the technology that you're bringing, next generation Joe cell stuff. I can't wait to hear all about that. And, you know, we all share a lot of common interests, so we'll probably go off into a lot of tangential but related topics. So we'll just see where it leads us, okay? And
Yeah, my pleasure.
One quick thing, here's a glass of water here, or a jar of water.
Cheers. I mirror your mason jar, your 1 liter.
Oh,
right
yeah,
there.
we're totally into mason jar drinkware around here.
Illuminati confirmed. I knew you guys were Masons.
There you go. We already did the secret handshake, Moshi and Jim, Mike and I, before the episode.
Eventually, I'm going to be sitting like this for a few minutes.
There you go. Okay, so what I'm holding up here, if you can see it, it's a silver Joe. And this was a technology also created by the Down Under Joe, who we're going to talk about a bit today to get things started. And what it does is it's a configuration of 4 silver probes and a special wiring, you know, to make a waveform that actually creates silver. Now, unlike colloidal silver, where you're using a single probe in order to impart silver colloids into a solution, these silver probes will never erode or give off any particulates because of Joe's invention here. Now, this Joe used to make these for people, and this is actually a homegrown version, okay? But it works just the same. And so what you do is you put this, it's plugged in over here. And as we're talking, you can see nice clear water. So I'll just I haven't used this for a while, so I hope it still works. And we'll see what the water looks like a little bit down the road in our conversation here. And
I wonder if you're going to get any nanoparticles there. Because
Uh-huh.
nano is the potential point of crossover with the homeopathic dilution
Right.
that the particles of whatever substance you're diluting to the
Yeah.
whatever degree, nanoparticles are there. And I think that at the nano level, 10 to the minus 9 might be the bridge between the vital or the subtle body and the physical body, the physical realm.
Yeah, I mean, we're off to a great start already here, and you're a bit above my pay grade with matters like that. So I really value your ideas.
Sure.
Now, the colloidal silver thing, we won't go into this too deep right now, but of course, most people use it as an antibiotic, in order to kill germs. Now, on our end, you can tell us any different, but we aren't germ theorists. And I believe, but colloidal silver works, and especially this a higher energy version of colloidal silver because you aren't bogged down with the particulates, and it can go right to
Yes.
the energetic. We can get a little bit into Steiner's understanding of the old moon phase, that established the astral body for mankind, and
Yes.
understand that silver can be very cleansing for the astral or emotional body. And I believe that's where this stuff really works and why it gets results, not because it's killing pathogens, but we'll leave it at that for now. And
Yeah.
Moshi, if you could give us a little background as far as how you got into this technology and everything that you do in the first place, and then we can use that, or you can use that to segue into next generation Joe Cell, and then who knows where we're going to go, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I've always been, when I was a little kid, let me say this. I started to feel the flow of energy in my body, and I had no context for it. I didn't know what it was. I hadn't read a book or heard what that might be. My only concept was that I was a wizard. I was like, I'm talking when I was like 10 years old or 9 or 8 or something. So I thought I might be a wizard. And then I read a book. I got into martial arts. I read a book on ninjutsu, and they talked about the flow of ki in the body. And then I figured I must be a ninja. So that was my first introduction to like the energy field. And then when I was 15, I read Barbara Brennan's Hands of Light, and that was a game changer because she, scientifically lays out all the layers of the auric field and her observation. She's a keen. Oh, there you go. Thank you very
Sorry to
much. That
interrupt, but I just happen to have a handy copy right next to my desk here, and a big fan of hers from way back.
way
And
back.
yeah, and
There's a running joke, Moshi, that anytime a guest mentions a book, Bear actually reaches into it's in another realm. It's like in D&D when you have your what's that called, where you can stash your stash pile, you can stash anything. Like
Yeah,
every
yeah. I think it's
time.
called
I don't
a
even have
bag,
to.
a bag of holding.
I don't
Yes.
even have to reach; it just appears in my hand.
Yeah.
So you're like Hermione
Precipitates.
Granger, you reach in and grab a book. That's absolutely hilarious. So I loved what I learned in Barbara Brennan and really to contextualize what I was experiencing because I started spontaneously meditating in my early age, 12, 13, felt chi, saw auric fields, and that really contextualized it. So, and I was also sick a lot as a kid. I had everything and I injured myself everywhere. And so I had this kind of wish, like, gosh, I would like to help people. So I decided I wanted to be a healer. And I actually considered doing Barbara Brennan's School of Healing. But I opted for what I thought was going to be a more balanced education between the scientific and the healing realms. And I went into naturopathic medicine. At the time that I went through it. So I graduated in 2000. I started in 1996. The school was having an identity crisis, and it's gotten worse since. And the identity crisis is between the Ahrimanic, material-based systems of thinking and trying to gain credibility by emulating conventional medicine and the true healing philosophies that are the originators of naturopathic medicine. However, it was still, I really got a good nurturing there and learned from a lot of good teachers. And so I became a naturopathic doctor. And I also got quite sick right before I started. I got quite sick with an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. And my healing through that really catapulted me to understand and to appreciate the power of the false belief system in chronic illness. So that's what I focus on, helping people recognize what false reality that they've adopted that is, in my understanding, the primary mover in illness. There's a lot of other things that we are privy to in this day and age that are very helpful and very nice forms to complement this type of approach. But in my opinion and experience, both personally and in practice, addressing the belief, the false belief, which is not aligned with the person's true nature, is the single most important and effective way of helping people heal from chronic illness.
Yeah. And if you had to memorize the same pathology books that I had to in my medical curriculum, that's enough to make you sick right there, right?
Right. Well, and you know what? Even my curriculum, I don't think it's very rigorous, extremely rigorous, probably not as rigorous as conventional medical teaching. But a lot of students got sick. I was very detached from my true nature. Thank goodness I had a pretty decent, launch point getting in, so I could find ways of staying centered. But there's such a tax on the intellect and learning things intellectually and memorizing, tons of data, that it's unhealthy for the person that goes through those programs. And I've worked with a lot of students that go through the naturopathic programs, and they're very sick mentally, emotionally, and physically. They've been traumatized through the program.
Also, a very high divorce rate with married couples that start the program. I went through 3 curriculums: medical, naturopathic, and chiropractic. And yeah, I guess I was just kind of a masochist, but yeah.
Good
I hear
for
what
you.
you're
Wow,
saying.
you got a lot of knowledge right there. You see,
A lot of abuse. I wouldn't call it knowledge.
well, I think any knowledge is good knowledge, even if it's conventional medical knowledge, just differential diagnosis, pathology, biochem, even if it's purely Ahrimanic, any knowledge is okay.
Yeah.
If it becomes the fundamental knowledge that we're referring to in addressing our health, that's a problem. That's a problem because it's disconnected from the most vital. Everything's, this inversion of reality, putting the physical first. It's actually last. It's the last in a long line of influences, starting at the highest form of our being, which is the Godhead, the true consciousness that unites all things. It's beyond definition. In Kabbalah, it's referred to as the world of Atzilut. And then the subsequent, then the bodies that we individually inhabit, like we have different bodies that we live in, right? The causal, the subtle, and then the physical. And then the physical is the last in line. It's the one that, it's the one where everything dumps when we're out of alignment. Everything ends up in the physical. And so whatever forms of disharmony that we read in it or we see through symptoms are a result of something happening on a higher level, right?
And
so that's,
and medical inversion techniques bring us into complete body consciousness and being a victim of our own biology that we're creating in the first place, moment by moment. Yeah, it's a pretty good scam.
Very, very good scam. Very, very Ahrimanic scam. To look at us as strictly physical beings and to deny the spirit is it's a scam, and it's a sham and a shame. It's all of the above, because the physical is beautiful. I'm grateful for my body, and I like to keep it as healthy as I can. Sometimes I don't do the best job of that. I but I do admire and love the body, and I think it's an amazing vehicle we get to live in, but it's temporary, and it is the least interesting aspect of the human being, and I think of who we really are.
The way we've all been indoctrinated, especially us doctor types, it actually sets us up for a grand adventure and exploration. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's just, I
Yeah.
know you've gone through a lot of the same steps. It's just like it's really fun going through the process of rediscovery of self. And
Yes.
where Steiner, said, okay, we go through these 7 octaves, you get the I, and then ultimately through the next 3 octaves, you actually become self-realized as a co-creator capable of transmutation. So it's a fun ride. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Yeah, I concur, doctor. I concur. Definitely. And
Well, doctors
you
always concur with each other, so thank you.
doctor. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned earlier about silver, and silver is an interesting core planetary metal. It's the ruler of the moon in alchemy.
Mhm.
And it also has exactly what you said. Well, it has these anti-properties that people do adopt. But if you want, we could get into the germ theory. Like I'm more of a balance. I think the conventional thinking of like the bacteria and virus is your
Mhm.
enemy,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And then there's no such thing as a virus, and there's no such
Mhm.
thing as a pathogen. I'm sort of in the middle. I don't even know if that's the right way of qualifying it, but that's
No,
a
I'd love to hear
stance.
your take on it.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to share. So yeah, so conventional medical model is like you're sick because there's a bacteria at play, and you're sick because there's a virus. And the not like there's no such thing as a virus, and I'm not sure if you also include. I haven't heard too much of the discussion around bacteria, because bacteria we could observe under a microscope. They're
Mhm.
plain, they're
Yeah.
obvious on the physical level. Um, the question is, what are they there for? That's where I kind of sit. And I
Thank you.
really see that I really believe that it's possible. I don't have 100% clarity about this, but I sort of lean into the pleomorphic theory that there are cells that exist inside of us and perhaps around us, but there's a soup there, right, that we're swimming in. So it's sort of like doesn't it's negligible how we define that, but that at certain at times of our life, when it's the right time, a virus or a bacteria will manifest and it will create symptoms of disease. And those symptoms of disease are purposeful. Kids when they get sick, and it's obvious that they're getting sick, they have leaps after it. And when we get sick, we detoxify. We definitely is definitely involved. So there's a sort of a marriage there, because I know that the non-germ theory is that, well, it's just the body going through a detoxification. But I've observed too much of a sort of a virulence or a spread. Like the spread is quite obvious to me, and I can't deny it. It doesn't really seem to work with the non-germ theory.
I would
So
I would
yeah, go
agree
ahead.
with a lot of that. I believe there are microbes that are acting pathogenically, and
Yes,
it's because the terrain has necessitated a mutation of the seed, variations that exist within us to a valence, we'll say, that need to scavenge or do some other job. However, if the terrain is way out of whack and it's not providing all the requirements for that mutation to do its job so it can just do it and go back to normal, then they end up overstaying their welcome. And
yes. And we get
and
chronic disease.
yeah, so I see truth on both sides, and then we can get into semantics of what the heck's a virus and everything else. My
Yeah.
only take, and then you continue, is that it's all about managing your terrain, and also the not just the bioterrain, but what we're really going to get into in this discussion is what the heck's creating the bioterrain on the etheric level in the first place, and on the astral level, especially because emotions are the big game.
Yes,
Could I say
sir.
one thing?
Sure, Mike, go
Um,
ahead.
we say often on this channel, nature is not inherently pathological, but pathogenic. Um, and I think this is really important to understand because bacteria in its own conscious form is enacting its own specific design according to what the creator has designed for it. And pleomorphism, we've seen that under microscopes on how that beautiful design works, where literally those forms shift and change according to the terrain that they're in. And so I think oftentimes we see it in the animal kingdom. We don't see pathogenicity because everything's within design. It is the human consciousness and our ability to, as the progenitors here, and which I truly believe, we were put here to progenerate and create the reality for the creator. We have the innate ability to mess it all up too. And as we mess up our terrain through our own psyche and our spiritual devolution or whatever, then the pathogens have to do their role and create symptoms.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and somebody very astutely just mentioned in the chat that the real contagions are more on the energetic, and I actually agree with that. Moshi, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So as above, so below, what we're seeing in the body is a reflection of what's going on higher. As it goes from an acute infection to a chronic illness, like they're not going away. There is a sign, there is a stuckness in the person's evolutionary field, mental, emotional, which is not getting the message, not understanding what the teaching is here. So illness is a gift of a message, especially chronic illness. Because sometimes when it's acute, we're acutely sick. Yeah, we say, "Oh yeah, I should rest up. I've been burning the candle at both ends." It's a simple message. But when it's chronic, whatever has developed in the body is exactly what the person is not getting in their evolutionary path to their true nature. So yeah, so absolutely. When a disease comes, I don't see it as adverse. What do you call it? Adversity. I don't see it as adversity, as an enemy, as something to be gotten rid of per se, but to be understood. And when I work with people, we start with the largest suffering for them, and then if they have a chronic illness, that's probably what their biggest suffering is.
Hmm.
And then when we dive, we start that as a starting point, and then I help explore to go deeper into the subconscious field, which is part of the subtle body. And then we will help reveal what belief systems, what mental patterns are at play, that because we can trace it back to the chief pathology and the original suffering where we started. We could trace the line of breadcrumbs right down to the belief. And when that belief shifts, and sometimes it does right during the appointment, quite often actually, and then there's a movement of vital energies, and the person has a spontaneous healing. The physical will shift immediately when the vital energy moves. What happens also quite often is the person can become aware of the belief. For example, let's say I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed, whatever. There's lots of different beliefs that we could have, and they become aware of it, but there's too much baggage for them to just blow it away, like like dust off the hand into the wind. So there's more deep diving to explore what I call tendrils that hold those patterns into place, that make for a longer period that's going to take to then help the body shift from the chronic illness. And so we can also encounter this disconnect that people have between their intellect and their emotion. And that's typical for us because we live in this world which is not truly strictly dualistic, but we tend to vibe at the level where duality seems real. And this is the classic duality polarity inside the human being, is the intellect and the emotional field, the masculine and the feminine, the sun and the moon. These are the rulers of these different worlds that we inhabit, different bodies. The sun rules the day, the moon rules the night. You know, the sun is ruled by gold, the moon is ruled by silver, we were talking about before. And that the moon is a mover of tides and emotional fields, and it rules the nighttime when we're supposed to be asleep, and the dream world, the subconscious world there. So the act of helping somebody heal is to first help them recognize at the intellectual level, it's a great start, what the belief is that they're having. Where the stuckness actually lies is in the emotional field. That's the problem. Because like 99 out of 100 times when I'm working with someone, they're like, yeah, no, I know that's not true. I know I'm okay. I know I'm good enough, but they're stuck because the emotional field has been so, you know, infused with the repeated thought and difficult emotion that results, that there's a habit there. And one other factor that I'll share is that there's a point of survival there in the person's mind, that this thought pattern actually is good for me. So there could be a period of divestment from that thought pattern because the person is actually desiring it with their heart. Even though you can clearly establish, look, this is killing you. Literally, you're going to die from this thought form, whether it's tomorrow or in 50 years, it's actually killing you. But there's desire. People have desire because they have associated that thought form with their survival, that it's good for them. It's going to bring them something they need. So it's very important to get the heart detached from the very thing that's killing the person. And this is how we're a funny bunch, us human beings. We're a funny bunch.
Yeah, and Steiner also contributed to our understanding greatly, not just to talk Steiner all the time, but he gave us great insights. It's an interplay between neurology and metabolism. You could maybe liken the neurology into the solar will forces, and in the metabolism more that yin, lunar energy. And as information comes down, it's literally a one-way entropic street, but it also at the same time gives the metabolic processes the information they need, and then the metabolic processes bring things back to life. And what you're talking about when you're working on that level of the psyche, and that actually makes changes physically that will encourage maybe a client that, oh, maybe something good's happening, then that experience is conveyed through the water element, the lunar forces, through the cerebral spinal fluid, I believe mostly. And then that is able to be up retrograde, taken back up into the astral level, which will then in turn change the informational fields. And now good healing is going to get that whole full circle mechanism going, like a toroidal field that's supposed to go in both directions. And, it's a beginning of being home free. So I didn't read any of that in my pathology book. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it would be so good to teach in our medicine, and I'm including conventional medicine there, which ideally will have some kind of a makeover after the horrible failures of the whole model and all the governing bodies and the experts during COVID. Horrible failure. And people ought to remember that, and so they should be held accountable and should start changing their ways. And I think a lot of medical doctors are, and a lot have moved into the functional medicine of things, which is an evolution away from strictly addressing illness at the symptom level. And it's looking at, more subtle things like how's your stomach acid and your your gut flora and different, nutritional markers. It's a more intelligent way of doing medicine. It's still predominantly or almost entirely material based.
Yeah.
So it's still, however, if I was to choose, I would go with functional medicine rather than
Yeah.
purely suppressive.
Yeah.
Unless we need,
Unfortunately, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just wanted to finish that thought. Unless we need to suppress symptoms to save a life.
Yeah.
And that's what heroic emergency medicine is for. And I think it will always have a place in society. Some people can't afford the time or they don't have the luxury of time in extremely acute situations where if they don't do something, they'll die. And
Mhm.
so to save a life, I think it's great that we have these tools of the conventional. And we have
Yeah.
tools in naturopathic medicine as well. Um, some of them are not as effective. You want to knock out a bacterial infection if it's gonna take the person's life, for
Yeah.
example, right? Yeah.
Bear and I
Go.
have talked about that as firefighters, the beauty of emergency care when obviously there are tools that are extremely valuable in that sense when you're dealing with something on an emergency end.
Yeah. I had 5 years full time in emergency medical services, and it was a great education, a great experience. And yeah, if I'm out there bleeding to death on the street or something, you know, good stuff. Those guys are heroes. And so I got to experience that very intensely for 5 years. And because of that experience, I felt that even though I was more on the conventional side back then, I was still a jock. So I was, reading books on nutrition and naturopathy in my spare time. But I felt that, I think I got the best of what conventional medicine has to offer. So that's why I jumped the fence and went to a 4-year naturopathic college and all the other stuff. So I think it was a great, and even in naturopathy, I think there's a place in the curriculum where you learn some of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, my experience, and this was back in the 70s, when I was in naturopathic college, it was more green allopathy, and it's gotten even worse since then. And by that, I mean, well, you're still in that mechanistic box. You just take a little ashwagandha instead of, a pharmaceutical. Yeah, better, less toxic, but you're still kind of feeding the body consciousness exclusively.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. What college did you study at in the 70s?
So in the 70s, there was an up and coming naturopathic college called Pacific College of Naturopathic Medicine and they had deep pockets behind them and good connections with the state politics. And they had the who's who curriculum. It was in Northern California. And so I think it was the best college campus I'd ever been on. It was just amazing. It was in the Redwoods. We had, just all that every medical teaching facility needs, dissection labs and classrooms and assembly halls. And it was a wonderful experience. However, the state was really dragging its heels as far as certifying naturopaths in the state of California. And it became
Yes.
apparent to me, when I was going through the curriculum that wasn't going to happen. And also with the staff and the people that formed the school in the first place. We had biochemistry teachers from Ivy League schools, and our dean was head of anatomical studies at University of Michigan. We just had a great staff, and we all kind of agreed that, well, we're playing state politics. So then they merged with Bastyr after I left, after I was done.
Cool,
And
cool.
then I was still thinking that I needed a stinking license back then. And I went to chiropractic college just so I could have an alternative license. And fortunately, I had a good education, so they waived a lot of my 4-year curriculum there. So I, was able to finish it up a lot quicker. But
Good, cool.
I hid under a chiropractic license for many years, when I did my private clinic. And, then I came to the conclusion that why do I need permission from a state to do what I already know how to do? And I just let all my licenses, certifications, and everything else lapse. and operated in a private. That's a different story. That gets into more legal land and everything.
I do like that as a topic. I have limited knowledge, but I've always been very interested in just the whole concept of, one nation under God
Mhm.
versus one nation under a legalistic system that's been developed by XYZ that's not aligned with God's will, and the idea of us being sovereign beings. And, like I think there needs to be some boundary there. For example, a person who's, abusing his or her patients needs to be regulated. But it's a fine line to cross because we really have this inherent knowledge within us, and this, God is us. So we ought to be sovereign. We shouldn't
Mhm.
be told by a governing body. Really, what that breaks down to is that governing body is trying to monopolize reality.
Yeah.
And that's dark. That's a dark force right
Very
there.
dark, very dark. If you've been through all the schooling that you can have verified that you have a certain level of expertise, you've gone through all the hoops. Where I got a little discouraged is doing my continuing education every year, so many hours. And I was doing all this hardcore, certifications and postdoctoral work, way, way beyond the number of hours I needed. And most of the time, they wouldn't allow it to count, even though it was, all about good doctoring. On the other hand, if you sign up for a seminar in practice management and how to make more money in your practice, oh, that's good. We can count those hours. So after a while, I said, screw this. And
Yeah.
I think the next thing that I really believe in is a free marketplace. If you're a crappy doctor, you're going to be out of business.
Right.
Yeah,
Because the number one thing is referrals from patients that have been
exactly.
healed. There's nothing better than a faithful person with a big family for referrals.
Right.
You've helped change their life, and that's how it's going to work. And also, there
I
has to
would
be
say
some.
I would just say that a free marketplace requires communication, community, and enlightenment, because we know of the quacks who went from town to town selling their snake oil and back in the day. And this is what, of course, the mainstream conventional systems use as proof of why we need regulations, is because people were getting poisoned by mercury and stuff. And these are all the magical solutions, we're told about. But we live in an age now where we have rapid information to the point where it's like information override, where people are getting overwhelmed with information. But when you
Right.
have when you have community like Alfa Vedic here, and like what you do, Moshi, and with our homies like Topher Gardner and Chance, with all these podcasts you've been on, then there's an illumined state of communal communication. And I think that's why we live in magical times right now. I believe we live in a place where now the free market can truly thrive because we're much more educated.
Yeah. Now,
Amen.
I love this conversation, but maybe to segue full circle back into the Joe cell. Here's
Yeah, I had
my
the thought myself. Oh, look at
here's
that.
my silver
Yeah.
Joe, and you remember this was nice and clear a few moments ago, and now it's like a real thick, milky kind of opaque substance. And now you drink this, and you get the full energetic of silver. You can drink as much as you want every day without turning blue. And I think, in my experience, a much better effect than colloidal silver. And so, Moshi,
So
maybe we
Bear,
can, yeah, go ahead.
so you're saying there's no colloids, there's no physical particles in that, or what's going on here? Is this like an electrical transmutation? It makes me think of the Brown's gas machine I have back here. So with the Brown's gas machine, you're using what, electrolysis or whatever, right? You're using
No,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a plasma field. It's not electrolysis. There's no separation at an electrode between oxygen and hydrogen. You actually have a plasma field that is creating a transmutation process. And I believe this is the same. Moshe, I love your insights because you have a more in-depth knowledge of this. I
Yeah.
have to default to a little bit of Russellian science, and also the way Joe himself explained it, in that you are creating the waveform with the configuration here And what he stated is that there will never be an erosion of actual particles from the silver probes. I've had this for a good number of years. I showed you this a long time ago, if you remember, Mike. And there's absolutely no pitting or, appearance of erosion that you would see on a normal colloidal setup. So I think you're just simply imparting the waveform of silver into what Joe says is the best medium for holding memory, which is water. And so here you have the informational fields of silver being held into a water medium. But
well, I was just going to
go
say,
ahead.
Bear, when you clean your machine here, you have residue that's supposed to come from the plate, but the plate never diminishes either. So
Right.
it's the same thing happening there, where you're having some sort of transmutation of creation of a residue through that process of the plasma field. So there is a creation here that is, and I'm trying to wrap my head around where it's coming from. What is the material coming out of? Is it coming out of some other field dynamic? And we relate this to the elements as, earth, water, fire, air. How is this transmutation happening? I think this is a great segue.
Well, dissimilar to the machine, the AquaCure, you don't have a buildup of sludge of any type here. You're not creating extra matter. I would argue very stringently that you are simply creating directly from the informational fields of that original water element that was created by spiritual beings who gave their astral body to create the third etheric element that the alchemists talked about, water, in order to create embodiment and precipitation on this plane. So, Moshi, why don't you take it away? I think you can do a better job than me.
Well, no, I think you're doing an amazing job. I'm learning from you. I don't have answers to all these questions. I think some of it is a mystery. I have a cool story from George Wiseman of the AquaCure machine, right? And he told the story. I've heard him tell it a number of times, gotten a little bits and pieces here. When you take Brown's gas, so you got your hydrogen and oxygen gas, which is a very interesting yin and yang composition of the water element. So everything is, bubbles within bubbles, right? When you burn that, there's a little bit of water that's created. It's called new water. That's what George Wiseman calls it. I think he may have made the term up, or maybe he got it somewhere else. And the new water has very special properties. It's pure potential. It's pure. It's coming out of this re-emergence of this marriage between hydrogen and oxygen. It's new. So it's pure potential. It has no memory, no way it's being, steered, because we can encode water, as we know, with our thoughts. Like, I'm sitting here in a bad mood, writing an email, and my water is picking up my vibes, and it's it's not this virginal, amazing potential water anymore. But they had like about a liter of this, which is a lot actually, of new water. I tried to create new water, and I got like a few drops, and I drank it. It actually tasted acidic a little bit, which is interesting. But they put this new water up on a shelf, kind of like, imagine they did this, right? They put it up on a shelf, and they had these guys that did it. They were a mineral company, a mineral supplement company, and they had a supplement with like 30 minerals, like seawater minerals and stuff. And they had that up on a shelf right beside this new water.
Oh, right.
And the sun shone through the minerals into the new water. The new water jar was closed, and a sludge started to develop. And they decided, and it got more and more, and they decided to do an assay on it, a chemical assay, and they found all 30 elements. So what the heck is happening there? The sun is shining through the minerals and bringing this information that's actually manifesting in the physical, in the new water. And I believe that new water can be imparted, like our intention could be imparted to do very special things. Some people have intended it to be like a hydrocarbon, like gasoline. They can light it on fire. And it's possible that it could be encoded with the intention of being gasoline and put in the car. I don't know how, if that would work or not. Just there's a lot of potential there and a lot of experimentation
Yeah.
to do. So what you're
By the
doing,
way, this tastes very much different than the original water. And when you're done, I'll tell you a little bit about something I do in my lab with rainwater.
sure,
But go
I'd
Even
love
ahead.
new
to.
water is the elixir of life, eh?
Well,
It
rainwater.
does sound like
Huh?
it
Go
sounds like
ahead.
one of the ingredients, perhaps the
Yeah.
mercury of the the
Yeah.
capital M mercury.
Yeah.
But obviously, Dr. Bear, sorry, there's something physical that's manifested in that water to change the
Mhm.
color, and I
Mhm.
can't say I know what that is. I know that nano silver will have like a brownish color, right? It has
Mhm.
a nice little goldeny, yellowy, brownish color.
Mhm.
And I have seen that color from doing electrolysis with silver. I don't know what it is. I'd love to play with it a little bit. So if with your permission or with your grace, your graciousness, I might learn how to do that from you. Because I never learned that from Joe. I don't know where you got that information. It's intriguing.
Oh,
I
interesting.
love dabbling with stuff like that.
Okay. So I'll keep this real quick because it can get pretty technical. But when you take filtered rainwater, it's important that you filter it. Then you put it through the same alchemical laboratory procedures. And we say alchemical, it's not spooky stuff, it's real science. So in spagyric formulations, for instance, there's three processes. You separate the sulfur, the salt, and the mercury. And each of those correspond to different things. Those are just metaphoric names, we'll say, in order to describe certain attributes that are in not just water, but in every life form and every particle that you can think of. So when you take those processes and apply them to water, which creates, distillation and all sorts of things, and then, you have to recover the salt at the end where you actually recover salts from the water. Now, keep in mind this whole process, you're never adding anything. You're just always working with water. Nothing's
Yeah.
ever added and at the end, you recover crystals, you purify them, you put it back. But basically, in the end, you end up with 12 different components
You're talking
because
about the Archaeus of water experiment. Is that what you're
yeah,
talking about?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And this
Gotcha.
is, well validated for centuries as far as this kind of process. So you
Yeah.
separate the parts and then you make four components of each process, and each one of them acts like a different kind of medicine that I have used on bodies, and you get different results if you use, the mercury of the salt versus and so
Yeah. Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have water that's gone through these alchemical laboratory real processes that all yield different effects, even though it's supposedly just the same old water that you started with and ended it with. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. So, I mean, water is such a fascinating topic.
yeah.
Like there's the fifth phase of water. That's a discussion. There's restructuring water. There's also one special property of water is its diamagnetic nature.
Hmm.
So, which is important in the Joe cell, in my opinion. And I have developed a kind of a theory, and through my I took the Joe cell when I discovered the Joe cell. I think it was around 2001 or 2002, and I started to play with it. And I immediately went to a spherical design. So I developed what I call the Mojo cell. I mentioned it after my name, very egoic of me, Moshe's Joe cell, right? Mojo cell. And it's spherical. So the field, an energetic field is more perfect. And that has been criticized because by Alex Schiffer, I think, and I'm wide open to what he had to say about it because the Joe cell has a broken field at the ends. They're pipes within pipes that are creating the field, but the Joe cell is broken at the end, so the field is not perfectly surrounded. And he says, well, that's important because it helps us do work. But with the Mojo cell, my intention, the back of my mind, in the front of my mind is like running cars on water, but in the back of my mind, it's like the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do with the Mojo cell. And it creates such a powerful field that when you stand there, if you want to meditate or you want to pray, it's opening up like kind of a 0 point field or scalar waves, you might say, because of the nature of water that's inside of it. And because water is diamagnetic, when it is surrounded by a field. So first of all, for the listeners that don't know what diamagnetism is, real simple. It's you bring a magnet to a diamagnetic substance, and the diamagnetic substance gets weakly repelled. And if you have a very strong magnet in something like a frog, you can actually levitate the frog because the frog is made up of largely of water, and the water goes like, whoa. And so the frog is levitating because of the diamagnetic principle there. So when the water in the center of the spheres, there's 4 in the Mojo cell, is surrounded by this field, it wants to escape. But it has nowhere to go because it's being surrounded by every direction. It wants to create a field of repulsion, but it can't. So it breaks open reality and goes to the other side. The field, the diamagnetic field of what's happening there. In addition to that, both the positive battery, the electrical form, and the negative are doing that, influencing this point in the center and creating a neutral field. And so what I understand is happening is we're actually opening up to receive or to align with or to invoke the causal plane, the energies from the causal. And the causal plane is, so we have the physical world, then we have the astral plane. And the astral is a world of polarity. Exactly, masculine, feminine, yin and yang, sun and moon. The causal is the world where these two have been united. And it is this is a bit of a paradox of creation, that the child is actually greater than the parents in a sense, even though it was created, right? It becomes greater because even though the creator doesn't exist in polarity. So the creator, the Godhead, is not these opposites. It's actually one, but there are these different points of manifestation. So in the astral, we have where we could observe the positive and the negative. In the causal, they're united, and it's the Christ energy, the Christ consciousness. And then there's even beyond that, which is the creator that holds all of that in itself, which is neither masculine nor feminine, but both. But neither. It's like brain matter wants to explode.
You can call that you call that like noetic, or it's just pure awareness, right?
Yeah, that's right. Pure consciousness. It's beingness.
Yeah.
And
I-ness.
yeah. Pardon?
I would say like I-ness too, right? That's
Yes.
sort of, yeah.
Absolutely. In Kabbalah, that's the world of Atzilut. The causal world is the world of Bria, and the world of polarity is the world of Yetzira, and then the physical world is the world of Asiya. And in yoga, all those the bodies that we inhabit are existing on those different planes. And I was very excited to read this in Autobiography of a Yogi, where there's a scene where Sri Yukteswar goes and visits, after he resurrects his body in the astral, he goes and visits Paramahansa Yogananda. And it's such an amazing scene. Like there's so much knowledge in that 1 or 2 chapters in the book, where basically he helped me understand Kabbalah to a greater degree by defining the different worlds. So the physical world lives in the physical. The physical body lives in the physical world. It's like a no-brainer. The astral world contains the subtle body, which is made up of the vital force, the vital body, known as pranamaya kosha, and then the subconscious mind, which is manomaya kosha, and then the intellectual, the higher mind, which is Vijnana Maya Koshan. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that properly. And then the causal is a world unto itself, which is a body, which is the subtlest of the body and the most holy of the bodies that we inhabit. Incredibly powerful. When a master is existing at the level of the causal, they can create their thought forms create reality. It creates matter. It creates anything that they desire. They're at that level of creatorness.
It's really like the life world. It's where all life comes from.
Yeah.
Where I would say the one up from that is like the light world, which is where all knowingness comes from, but where true life comes from. Hey, I just remember hearing too, I was just thinking about Yogananda again. That book is such a great read. It's such a
So
trip,
great.
man. Is it
So
true
good.
that he decided on stage to unfold out of reality and then he just collapsed and left his body and
Yeah.
yeah, that's so
He
wild.
he left his body, and I think that he had been wanting to do that for a long time. His master told him that he is teaching very advanced souls on Hiranyaloka. Again, I don't know if I've only ever read these terms. I've never heard them pronounced, but that's in the astral plane. He treats it, he is a teacher for souls that are ready to evolve to the causal. Because right now we're in the physical world and we're working to evolve towards the astral by detaching from desire, essentially. Like when we die and we have these strong desires, it pulls us back to incarnate because we're creators. So we desire, all right, here you go, we're gonna come back. And when what Sri Yukteswar told Paramahansa Yogananda is that, well, I train people who have mastered the ability to leave their body in at death, like voluntarily leave their body. So that's what Paramahansa Yogananda did. He literally left his body, like, and it's almost like Bilbo Baggins, where he says, "Okay, that's it. I'm out of here. See ya." And he put on the ring and disappears from his 111th birthday party. It's like Paramahansa Yogananda said, "Well, see y'all. You know, it was nice. It was nice hanging with you." And then boom, he
No,
put on.
would you consider that like ascension? Was that like the step out into the causal plane and then having power to come back and in and out, like like they talk about the ascended masters in the West, or they call them what do they call them in the East? I'm having a brain fart. Or is
Yeah.
this a step kind of below that? If you even believe in that ascension is something that can happen.
Yeah, I do believe ascension can happen. I'm not sure to be honest with you, like what that means. I do think it does mean, well, taking the word of the book, at its face value, that Paramahansa Yogananda could be ready for ascension into the causal world.
Mhm.
Because let's say a soul stops incarnating repeatedly, this Buddhist idea of you know suffering through incarnation. And you don't have to be Buddhist to recognize the suffering of being here on the planet. Even just after a simple fast, when you're like blissed out and you're not very incarnate, and then you start eating again, and you come back into the body, you're like all the aches and pains come back and stuff. Well, when a master of this world who is detached and realizes, you know what, I'm done here. Like, great, thanks, physical world. I'm done here. Now they can come back if they wish, if they choose, but they're not brought through this forced incarnation process. And now they're living as their baseline in the astral world. When they die in the astral, and I put die in quotations because it's a different form of death, they actually they're the heaven of heaven, because the astral world is heaven, is the causal world. So the heaven of heaven is the causal, and they'll spend some time in the causal, and then they'll reincarnate into the astral. And then there's this process of mastery that Sri Yukteswar is one of the teachers that helps the doula, people into the causal.
So I was thinking of Mahatmas, right? And like you have Babaji, who is the teacher of Yukasar, who is what would be considered like an ascended master. Like he has the ability to come in and out of the physical plane, the causal plane, the astral plane in his embodiment. And, you know, we talk in the Western tradition, like Saint Germain and these other people who have
Yeah.
gone through this process as well. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
stuff that Bear and I love to talk about in the private
My
Bible.
favorite.
So
This is my favorite topic. I absolutely love it.
I
And
think, go ahead, Moshi, please.
oh, sure. I wanted to address this idea of levels of mastery because
Mhm.
it's quite interesting to me. I find it fascinating. So in the yogic,
That's
yeah,
the
that's right. Yeah. You know, I'm
teachings of
trained
Babaji.
in the teachings of Babaji. I'm trained in Kriya Yoga, which is the line of Babaji brought Kriya Yoga. He's one of the masters that did that. And so the first step, I think, you know, maybe there's different ways of going, but the first step is mastery, is self-realization. So the soul, the individual realizes that they are that oneness, they are the consciousness. And then from that, they could then influence the different bodies that we inhabit. I name them all in the Sanskrit, you know, the intellect, the subconscious, the vital, and then the physical. And each step that they master is an invitation for that godness to basically have sovereignty over that level of reality. So the masters in Tamil Nadu in Southeast India were called siddhas, and the siddhas had mastery at the mental level. They had completely allowed their mind to basically recognize the transcendent nature of reality. And so they were masters at that level. Babaji is a master all the way down to the physical. His physical body is literally vibing with all the other levels in oneness with the universe. And he has attained physical immortality. And you know, whatever that means is amazing. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to sit around in this body for the rest of my life. He can incarnate, as you said, go into between worlds and change his form at will, and what other masters at that level can do. I love this topic. I find it fascinating.
I think another element that's important is to understand we are also in a larger cosmic cycle that is really allowing us to cut to the chase. And if you go back into the Rosicrucian, let's just say initiates, and then take that through as a precursor to the Theosophical and to Steiner Anthroposophical, which then prepared the way for this knowledge to be given at the perfect time when mankind was going to be supported by the larger cosmic shift. Then that prepared for the Saint Germain teachings, which they explain are the perfect balance between the right and left hemispheres of the planet. Now, the Eastern concepts are, obviously invaluable, but then there's also that other polarity that we have in the West that is really more adept at manifestation versus having out-of-body experiences, which were commonplace in the East. And what the Ascended Master teachings are about is the merging of the heart and the mind and having them as no longer separate or perceived as separate because they never were separate. So we're merging and operating on all cylinders as a single unit. The other thing is that right at the beginning of our discussion, we talked about the grand inversion. Well, the biggest inversion of all is to get amnesia about the fact that there is a higher electronic body, causal body, whatever you want to call it, just a few feet above our head. And if that wasn't a fact, then we would not have any ability to animate our body or have a single thought, let alone have a conversation like this in the next moment. So in the Ascended Master teachings, and I'm not talking about all the bastardizations and New Agey stuff, but this is like a real progressive lineage from Rosicrucian, Theosophical, Anthroposophical to Saint Germain teachings, where they said now, because of the cosmic dispensation, mankind must know the simple truth to the point where even a child can understand it. And all it means is that, as the old alchemists understood, there's this etheric stratification. And if you understand those stratifications and the mechanisms in play that start with the fire or the hydrogen element, that take pure consciousness, informational fields, coagulate, precipitate, all the way down through the water element into the South Pole, into the carbon element, things that, people like myself can duplicate in a laboratory. Now, if you are capable of the fire element, which only man is capable, the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms are not capable of manipulating the fire element. We are consciousness capable of having an idea. Now, what the Ascended Master teachings say is that if you are capable of manipulating the fire element and have original idea, then you can bypass all the other etheric strata and go to direct precipitation without the burden of going through the whole time lapse kind of linear progression in order to precipitate your experience, your biology, or having the bright idea that you're somehow trapped in your own creation down here in the biological world. So now, that old saying, where your attention is at, there you shall also be. Now, the whole discipline with the Ascended Master teachings is to develop a habit where, more often than not, when you get to that 51 percentile, where your thoughts are more at the realm of your higher electronic body, and you are all the time, never stop to be master of the fire element. Now that inversion will be put right side up, where you are creating your experience every single moment, including the precipitation of your body by the coalescence of so-called atomic matter waveforms, or however you want to look at it. So that, to me, just my, belief system is what the Ascension is about. It's no longer being trapped in the material because you have successfully put things right, and now you are coming from top down rather than trying to figure out what the hell's above you or what's possible in the first place. Just my thought.
That was some high level shit. I actually, that was deep. I tracked everything that you said. You actually wove a lot of very key points together there. That was great.
I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, no, I absolutely 100% agree. A lot of this has to do with, like, we could look at it a simple way too, is that it's about our perception of who we are. And it's been inverted. Literally, the brain inverts. In my book that I published in 2004, it's called The Letting Go of Free Will, the first book of the last 4 books of Moses that I started that series. I show how the brain reverses everything. Like, literally, psychologists know this at the scientific level. So what you see in the right visual field is visualizing the brain on the left, and on the left, on the right, and it's inverted upside down. So our brain is recreating the reality around us in an upside down fashion. So what we're actually perceiving is not really where it is, or not there. And because of the nature of the brain, our consciousness sits in this little chamber that the brain creates and believes itself to be within that reality as the body. So, and that's an inversion, because really we're not in this little reality. We are the beingness that extends beyond all definition into the infinite, the non-finite, the non-defined. So when consciousness becomes aware of that, and not just consciousness itself, because consciousness is always aware of it. It is the consciousness. it's the mind. This is the game. The mind has a choice to either, in body and identify with the physical reality and the lower worlds, or being aware and absorbed in pure consciousness. Then it inverts. So there comes a point where first we realize that we're not trapped in the body at all. And you actually have the experience of that. You see, you're hovering around, and there's this thing following you wherever you go. And then eventually, as that evolves and that deepens, then the thing that's following you around can also be infused with all of the light from the higher levels. And then gosh, I've always been very attracted to physical immortality, and I think I don't think so much as out of a fear of death, but more so as a fascination and a deepening of a continuation of consciousness. Now, consciousness always continues, but there is a certain, starting and stopping. Oh, shit, here I am again. I got to learn to ride a tricycle again. Dang it, So there's a certain nice thing about not having to die in the flesh to be reborn in this reincarnative cycle. So all this stuff is really, really cool, really fascinating to me. Yeah.
I think it's one of the sadder things than a lot of the community around like Soul Trap and Prison Planet, that people are like, I can't wait to get out of here. And we're, and it's like, that's another inversion, and something that we often hear dispel that. And through the understanding that, no, you have to do the work here to get out of it. That's the whole point of being here. And that's why the physical ascension is so cool, because literally you transfer what they would say in some of these books, your atomic structure or whatever, but your etheric or whatever body will leave, but you are taking with you that physicality as well, and that you can then come in and repopulate in a physical form whenever you want. That is the ultimate expression of freedom.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And like the idea of Prison Planet, or like the world to come, heaven is in the next life.
Yeah.
That's got a little bit of a large bit of false thinking there. I think that life is precious, and that we should fight for it as long as we can. There does come a time in certain people's life where their quality of life is so low that I can understand them wanting to move on at that point to the next life. But when we get into all kinds of challenges, and I hear, like, if I work with a patient and I hear them say, like, I don't like this world, I don't want to be in this world, that's such a big problem, because this world is to be cherished, because it has pure potentiality, and we're existing in all of those worlds simultaneously, and manifest world, the physical world, also at the same time. So there's pure potentiality in this existence. It doesn't have to go one way or another. That's the test. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's the game.
That how you would now, to segue, to finally get into the technology here, in terms of the mojo cell, isn't that what that's playing with, is the potentiality within the field dynamics?
Exactly. The causal is the point, is the pure potentiality. It's the world of the potential.
So Moshi, could you explain, just for our audience, what exactly we briefly explained the Joe cell in the intro, but the Joe cell, and then what you did to make it the mojo cell, and just the actual physical makeup of it, and then the theory behind how it works and what it does.
Yeah, sure. So it's like Russian dolls of spheres. It's a sphere within a sphere within a sphere within a sphere. And they're separated. They're electrically isolated with spacers, nylon spacers. Could be polycarbonate too, something that doesn't conduct electricity. We want to separate each sphere from the other. So we have this principle, which also exists inside of what Bear was referring to in the Brown's gas, is that there's like a kind of a plasma field created So you have your positive, you attach the positive on the outside, and you could play with this. You could put the negative of the battery on the outside and the positive on the inside, because in a way that's a misnomer, because the negative is where the electrons are coming from, right? On the battery. So that, in my understanding of the masculine, is the positive. So that should probably go there. But in any case, by applying the electricity of a battery or a direct current system, we don't want alternating current. We want direct, because we want to create a flow. To the outside and the inside, you get these neutral plates, which enhances the field. It augments the field and creates, basically converts the whole system to a capacitor. Capacitor is able to store energy, and then it discharges the energy in like burps or orgasms or the explosions of an implosions. And that's how I've experienced it when I've really gotten my Mojo Cell water cooking and I'm in its field. I'll feel like this wave coming off of it. And it's not all the time. It like builds up. It's giving off different things, right? So I'm talking about one of the things that it gives. But one of the things that I've experienced in its presence, I'll literally put my hand on the jar that it's sitting in. Because you could also just have the Mojo Cell containing water. You're not going to put the whole jar of water into the car. But I like the feel of when there's water around it and inside it better than when it's just the cell itself. When I put my hands on and I'm meditating, I'm being drawn into a larger dimensional reality. It reminds me of when I built this room in a house that I lived in about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I put orgone, I put orgone in the walls, and I sealed it up. Very bad idea, but very cool experiment, because you felt in the room like the wall, like it was a bigger room than what the dimensions were supposed to hold. Mm-hmm. So there's this expansion of physical reality around these devices, around this technology.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had that sensation sometimes. Wake up in the middle of the night and you just feel bigger than the room and everything, and it's kind of a really cool thing before you come back into your body. So how far away are we from actually developing a technology with this, so we aren't forever dependent on Donald's drill baby drill?
Well, I suspect it's already there. I'm not on the money there. Mm-hmm. I have managed to help cars run with anywhere from 10 to 50% fuel mileage improvement. The bigger American fat cars, that they have a lot of room there for improvement, but the tight, closely regulated, smaller European, Japanese cars will not get as much improvement. Topher and I actually drove many years ago. When I first met him, it was through the Mojo Cell, and he was really interested in that. And we drove together from Florida to Texas, and we had a Mojo Cell on it, and we had a lot of very interesting experiences. It was in a Land Rover, which is a two transmission tank of a car, very heavy handling, feels like you're driving a tank, and it was light on its feet, and we felt very buoyant in the car. And when we were driving, and we had two companions in the car with us, and when they drove, if they were in a bad mood or they weren't in an open flowing state, there was an amplification of that in the field of the car. You could feel that. And this is yeah.
So it's in operating on different dimensions than just the water car that we're all familiar with. And that guy unfortunately experienced an early demise for some reason. But we're not just splitting hydrogen.
Calls the Y factor.
Yeah.
The Y factor is the human factor, mm-hmm. the consciousness factor. And that opens up to Steiner's teachings around moral technology. Mm-hmm. John Keeley at the end of the 19th century, he was creating motors and vibrational frequency generators and anti-gravity devices that only he could operate. because his Y factor was connected
Right.
to it. Yeah. And so, and moral technologies are, I think, in the direction of the answer to this question of when we'll be free, but our consciousness has to match that. And
Yeah.
we have to be more causal planey
Hmm.
in the pure
Right.
potentiality to allow for that. But I do think there are technologies that already exist. They've been bought and buried, they've been
Hmm.
suppressed. And
So is the
yeah,
idea that the fuel, in terms of the fuel waste or making it more efficient, would increase as the users in the vehicle were more in alignment with, I don't know, their spiritual path? Is that what we're talking about here? Like this qualitative element to the technology, and then like relating that to, I think stacking functions is really where we need to get there in terms of your question about getting away from the
Hmm.
explosion of combustion. So a mojo cell with other technology within a completely redesigned mode of transport is really where we need to be going.
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
Or
also,
or just horse and buggy, but go ahead.
I think we also have to understand what a shift in consciousness would happen when we get the understanding that we don't have to consume our own environment in order to create energy, even within our own bodies. What would it do if no longer we had to mine, resources out of the earth? Walter Russell understood that everything is waveforms, and with the waveform technologies, we can create any element on the so-called periodic table. We can create hybrids. We don't have to mine resources. We can just recreate them in that way. And also, we can dissolve them rather than, when we're through with them, have them end up in landfill somewhere. And, in my practice, I did labs every visit with every patient, and it was based on Kerry Ream's work. I don't know if you have ever done that ionization analysis. And what he proved is that the human body, really, even in the poorest shape, gets at least 70% of its nutrition directly from the atmosphere. And that can be very easily explained when you understand the etheric mechanisms. But instead of just looking at molecules and chemistry, the process allows you to mathematically convert those molecules, salts, sugars, albumins, things that I would measure in everybody, into a line of electrical resistance. And then rather than adding chemicals or remedies and things, you knew how to nudge that line of resistance so that it was less impediment, more free energy flow. And when you did that, then people got better with very less effort than just taking, herbs and things forever.
right,
And then
right.
the other element that's really become prominent now is the understanding of human photolysis. Plants, of course, take in our carbon dioxide, and in the presence of light with chlorophyll, they convert it into energy. But it's a one-way technology. Now, human photolysis mediated by melanin, unlike photosynthesis, it's a one-way where it just disassociates water and hydrogen in order to release electrons for energy. Photolysis with melanin allows a two-way situation where you disassociate, release the electrons, but then you also reassociate the hydrogen and oxygen so that it can just keep going around and around and around perpetually. So we have free energy within us, but we just have to wrap our minds around the fact that that's true, and get out of the habit of thinking that we have to, consume so much of our environment just to crudely, develop one-way technology through our mitochondria alone.
So
Right.
we need breatharian vehicles.
Well, we could, or just sun gazing as a means of absorbing the energy that we
Yeah.
need. I mean, that's pretty advanced. And I'm a Taurus. I really love to eat. I enjoy the process of eating. I love food. So I'd be giving up a certain level of desire there,
I'm an
which,
Italian, so I'm right with you on that one.
yeah, right, right. But to talk about the influence of us on the moral technology or on these etheric energy sensitive devices, there's more than one factor in the why factor. So one is what kind of state is that person in? Are they in harmony with themselves? Is their heart wide open? Do they have a strong vital field? And the second thing is, what do they think about the device that's happening? Is there a connection there? And they're going, "You're awesome. I love you, and thanks for providing this energy." Or is it going, "The hell are we doing here? This is weird." Like doubt. Doubt would be a killer of the connection between the operator of the car. That's the head. Like the head of the government trickles down to the people. Well, the head of a car with under this influence would trickle down. So yeah, these are some of the factors that we've played with and that we've learned about it. What I find fascinating is that when you're in the field of the mojo cell, and I think the Joe cell as well, although the field is broken because the ends are not surrounded, so it's shooting out the ends. But the mojo cell is creating this perfect field of the 0 point field and the scalar waves and all that. You're literally in the point of pure potentiality. Like you could pray over that and have a real acceleration of change. And of course, inside of us, so in a way, what we're creating is a bit of like a black hole, white hole. Right? The black hole is where it implodes, and then the white hole on the other side, it gives out on the other side. And we, in our own beings in the center, have the same thing going on. It's a black hole, white hole. There's this point of conversion. And so when a person is in a deep place of meditation, they might get to that point of the field where they are about to invert. They're about to go from this body-centric consciousness to the place of the other side, which is interesting because you're probably familiar with the galactic heart center at 27 degrees Sagittarius. Like conventional science acknowledges the presence of a black hole, and what a black hole actually is. Like if we're looking at flat Earth versus globe Earth technologies or theories. It's this conversion point that, in astrology and in Mayan technology and different cosmologies, the idea is that when we die in this physical, we go to the galactic heart center and we go back to heaven on the other side of reality. So in the center of our galaxy the center is a very important principle because the center is the basis, the foundation of all things. So the foundation of this present life form in this physical world is a conversion point that's a black hole, white hole, the yin yang of both sides of reality. I mean, there's a better way to look at it.
Dude,
and
oh man, Moshi's hitting exactly on that guy I just recently shared you with, who's that flat Earth. There's this cat out of New Zealand. I'll have to share you. Moshi after the chat. We want to get him on Alfacast, who's got this whole model that's exactly what you're saying about, but it's a flat plane of inertia, but then essentially we're in a massive battery and a magnetic force. And part of that is that we're in is that flux in the middle he talks about where pure potential comes out of, which is the black hole. That is where literally magic is. And we can't enter that physically. And then it's coming out kind of like this. I mean, it's a dual-sided sort of structure that we're in. And then there's the north, there's the poles. And he says that the North Pole, which is the very center, we can't go in, where it's emanating from, is also on the perimeter too. It's not the South Pole. And the South Poles are actually within the capacitance regions of the tropics.
Yes.
And anyways, I'll share this with you because mainly everything you're saying right now, and he talks about the Milky Way coming over, and that Milky Way in the middle is exactly what you're saying, which is the center of the galaxy.
That's right. That's where the black hole at the 27th degree of Sagittarius is.
Yeah.
And it's a point of merging of the beginning of time with the end of time. It's a null point where all time and space stops. And that's the same as in the causal plane. The causal is a point of great stillness. the polarities, and Russell talks about that when we have a desire or we have a thought that we must do something, or there's this call to action, the causal
The
plane
equation.
splits.
I just lost you guys. Sorry.
Oh, no
Okay,
problem.
I think I'm back. Yeah, I was just about to say Walter Russell, he describes it as the stillness of the equator, and as above, so below. So that's in where the two halves of the toroid converge, and what we're saying, mechanistic science has brought our consciousness into the compression cycle only, where we're compressing information in a stratified manner, which also gives us the sense of time intervals. And if you're in that equator, you're not just going into this eventual compression where there's no mana to hold you back together again, so die and things
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're always constantly going in that two-way flux of compression renewal. So sorry, I lost you, so I don't know what I stepped in the middle of there.
No, actually, I was talking about Steiner and sorry, not Steiner, Walter
Russell.
Russell, and how Russell talks about the causal, like
Mhm.
he calls it still magnetic light.
Right.
And I can totally visualize it like that. There's a point of pure stillness. So the
Mhm.
causal is the point of the fulcrum between the masculine and feminine moving like this. It doesn't move. It's the point of most power. And when we have a desire, the masculine and feminine from the causal split, and they move, they go through motion and they seek union. Like we might call that like the orgasm of sex, right? It's like, oh, here we come. Oh, and it's we fulfill our desire. But what happens is that when we have the mind supports the belief that I need that movement and that fulfillment of desire. Let's say I feel like I'm not respected. I need respect. So I keep creating this like need result. It's almost like problem reaction solution. I have a problem. I have a reaction, and then here's the solution. I get what I want. It's like, oh, that felt so good. It's like a drug path of externalizing our needs, whereas the causal plane is unconditionally okay. It's in perfection. There's nowhere we need to go, nothing we need externally. So when this desire happens, the polarities seek to be united, but the causal is already in perfection. And the black hole, this idea of black hole and white hole, um, each of us carries that. This is what I think others have used this term too. I'm not sure what they're referring to, but I think it's the same, the law of one, that in the center of our galaxy is this oneness where we go when we die and we go into the other side, and then we're on the other side of in heaven, so to speak. And we are that same thing. The same thing, this pattern, this law of one is repeated everywhere within the smallest cell to the human being to the largest, the macrocosm of the universe. This masculine, feminine, unified field imploding together into another side of reality and coming out into a unified field. And these technologies are calling on the energy from the unified field. The polarities, it's not a violent, like explosion when the two come together, which is what happens with our electricity and what happens with our combustion systems of explosions and harnessing the energy from explosion.
That's
It would
because
be a gentle.
Moshi, Walter Russell would say that's only on the one side. It's the death side. It's not the
Yeah,
combination. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Exactly. It's the death side. And it's part of our evolution. It's helped us evolve to the point where we're not like, well, some of us are, but generally in humanity, we don't have to get out and dig potatoes and peel potatoes all day and have no time for meditation and reflection, just like hand to mouth, pure survival mode. So it was a step in our evolution. Just like Steiner says, the Luciferian, like the inclination toward the spirit, and the Ahrimanic, the inclination toward the material, were parts of our evolutionary path too. They were required. without the harmonic energies, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be here in our bodies. Like the harmonic is necessary. The problem with it is that when it gets out of balance with the Christ and it tries to rule, it becomes antichrist. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to just comment to our audience. We're really geeking out here today, which is awesome. I love it. But we have to remind ourselves that this has great practical value. In the healing arts, for instance, when you wrap your mind around these concepts to the point where you own a great deal of it, really magic happens in your work, and you're not just relegated to physical modalities, but now you're allowing the awareness of your consciousness being the main motivator of everything that happens in the first place. Just like the same, then you have more energetic momentum behind whatever you're applying as far as a physical modality. It just works better. And the same thing when an alchemist goes into the laboratory. When you understand these principles, yeah, you're using laboratory equipment and you really have to know your way around, physical stuff so you don't blow yourself up. But at the same time, when your consciousness is aligned with these processes, then some of these things I was talking about, like just separating the alchemical properties of water, it actually happens, and it can be demonstrated that you're actually transmuting substance. And the same thing in our technologies with the mojo cells and things, that will bring us to the point where not only are we efficiently creating renewable energy, but also ultimately our consciousness will be involved when we're operating vehicles that are, operating on these kinds of fuels and things. So that's
Imagine how
where
healing that would
humanity's
be.
going. And this isn't
Yeah.
pie in the sky. It isn't new agey. This is real science. And we have been seduced into this one side, the compression cycle, as Walter would say. And it's just time that we wrap our minds around both sides, quality as well as quantity, and know that it's incumbent on us to merge our heart and our mind. So, what haven't we covered today, Moshi,
Well,
that you'd still like to cover?
I
And
just want to
sorry,
say
Mike, you're going to say
one
something.
thing real quick. This we're developing the Music and Sky Village. We're not doing the focusing just purely on the festival anymore, because we're going to take everything we've been learning from Bear and all these great Illumin ones that have spoken at our events and et cetera, to actually create a community that will be implementing and integrating all this into it. From stuff that like Topher's building, and how the structure, literally the healing architecture, biomimicry, and then this sort of grounded, really ancient holistic technology within, and like how we using biochar, and then ideally having mojo cells in all the homes, and orgone, and resiliency in terms of natural disasters, in the private, with our land patent, et cetera, with the trusts and the PMA, all that stuff is what we're currently working on, Moshi. And I think that is truly a fantastic solution, right? As we're seeing LA burning to the ground, and these places as collapsing from these death systems, right, that have been built upon lies and destruction, and literally burning, right? Burning stuff to have your latte on Sunday at your fancy restaurant. That's not working anymore. And yes, there are nefarious preacher class that is using that to their advantage in ways, but also I think it's a great, as we started this with symptomology, right? And reading the symptoms to tell us the true signs of where the body is. Well, that body is failing. Those symptoms are telling us it's time to grow up and seek out new ways of doing things. And that's what I am most excited about this year. And in the next, we have like a 5-year plan, is seeing those types of communities come to fruition. Where
Yeah.
you are, just curious, where you are are you homesteading? Are you implementing any of that kind of stuff in your life there?
Yes, I am. I am homesteading. I grow my own food, not exclusively, but as a supplement.
Yeah.
If we had to survive here, we'd get really skinny, but we could do it. We wouldn't have our mustard. Well, maybe we could make mustard, but like the little like fancy luxuries we wouldn't have, but we could do it here.
Yeah, like
With a
us here, we grow a lot, but we still have to go to the store to buy our Fruit Loops.
yeah, that's right. And get all those good colors inside, which is like matches the chakras. It invokes the chakra power, right? Um, and I also do electroculture, which we were talking a little bit about before. I have different electroculture implementations. I have some of my wonderful toys that I've developed. I have a healing chamber that I meditate in every morning, and I breathe Brown's gas while I'm doing pranayama. And I'm sitting in an iron framed Nubian Russian sort of pyramid with walls of diamagnetic and paramagnetic mirroring the Great Pyramids of Giza. My head has this it's like the next level of aluminum foil, like the aluminum foil hat. It's literally a hat made out of wires, and the wires are connected to an elevated tower, and it's not earth grounded. So I get the positive sky potential in my head, and I'm sitting on a grounding mat and while I meditate. So it's a very, very nice little toy that I implement. And I have the Joe cell. I use my Mojo cell. I use the Mojo to distill water as the elements to distill
Oh,
water.
neat.
It's really cool. And the water is very, the kids love it. They take a sip and then they start running around the basement because they get this boost of immediate energy. It's pretty cool. And I use that with my other experiments. Bear, I'd love to talk to you about alchemy sometime.
Oh,
It sounds like
absolutely.
you're doing the real thing. And I'm very excited about that, to have a brother in alchemy, is because alchemy for me is the most elevated form of God worship, of implementation of all these different things. I know the word worship is funny, but I think you get my drift. Like
Yeah.
all the different things I've learned, and it culminates in alchemy. Alchemy is the arena within which it all is brought to bear. So I'd love to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I
Um,
love to. Yeah, my lab is like my little man cave safe space. I just go in there, close everything up, and do stuff.
You need a mojo cell in there, Bear.
Yeah, I do.
that'd be cool. That'd be cool. You could do, because
By the way, we're
laboratory.
working with Topher on potentially helping him manufacture those. I don't
Yes,
know if I
I
should be,
heard. I
I don't
know
know if
it.
I should be saying this out in the public right now, actually.
Well, yeah, it's okay. No, I'm talking with Topher. Thank you. I'd love to have it in the family. I'd
Yeah,
love
yeah.
to have it in the family.
Yes.
We're gonna see about that. I could chat with you about that later.
Yeah.
But so yeah, this is all super exciting. So yeah, we did have cows, and we had ducks and chickens, and we were thinking of getting more animals, but I've toned down a lot of the stuff to what works for me. Maybe that'll change in the future. We kind of went gangbusters when we first started, when we first came here to East Tennessee, and we've toned it down a lot because at least at this point in my life, a limited amount of time per day,
Yeah.
and in kids and stuff. So in any case, yeah, I
Well,
love this
but Moshi,
discussion.
that's why community and commerce is important, because there's no single homesteader that's going to like survive the collapse or whatever, right? Like it's not about that. It's about building the community of and enjoying what you do and having that self-sufficiency and enjoying the health aspects that come out of having your own chickens and growing your own food and all that. Of course, just the act of doing it, the creative act of taking that into that sovereign act of sourcing your own food. But there's no way we're going to cover one individual unless you're doing it full time with the full staff to be able to feed a family of four even.
Yeah,
So but that's why community is so important, and like using stuff like the internet to connect us all so that we can do commerce with each other and like help push out the mojo cell to create revenue so that you can then buy Mary Joe's organic, produce down the street, and ideally not using debt-based greenbacks, but by using our own new currency, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think we're all going with this, and that's
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's a beautiful vision where there's a decentralization, like little communities popping up. And ultimately, there isn't a one world order, but it's of a different nature than, and that's typical of the so-called, evil that's trying to govern the planet and take away our freedoms. It wants to be like God, so it emulates these important principles of natural law and natural truth, that there is a unity there, and there should be a unity amongst all nations under God, all nations under God, under the oneness, under the truth of who we are. So I love your vision, and if I could be a part of it in some way, I definitely would love to. And I'd
And
like to invite,
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, Dr. Bear, you had asked me if there was something else I wanted to mention, or I don't
Please.
know if it was you or Mike, you said that, I forget. So I'm training practitioners, and you don't have to necessarily be like a medical practitioner, but maybe you're a practitioner of yoga, you're in some form of evolutionary process, you've been working on yourself, or you're a medical doctor or a nurse or whatever, naturopath. I train people how to do the Vis Dialogue, which is the mind-body medicine that I was talking about, like getting to the root cause. I have a 1 year training program, and I think you guys will be offering some links there. And so I invite you to come check it out. If you want, you could schedule a 30-minute chat with me, no
Love to.
charge. See if it's a fit, see if there's something that you'd like to do. And I do also offer health programs. I'm getting kind of full on that, but if somebody really, in their heart, they really want me to work with them, I could work with them for their own personal health. But even in the program that I teach, the 1 year program called Holistic Counseling, there are 6 sessions that you get with me personally for your own healing. So it's like you get the health program and you get the training program in one shebang. And so I'd be honored and love to receive anybody in that light.
beautiful.
Awesome.
That I do have that link in the show notes already. That's the holistic-counseling.ca, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's the program. That's the certification program. And then the dr-moshe.com is my personal, the personal one-on-one healing opportunity there.
Oh, beautiful.
Moshi, I told you today would be too much fun, and I'm really glad we made this connection. So let's stay in the loop with each other. I think we still got a lot to talk about.
I agree. I'd love to have round 2 at some point when that feels right, when opportunity arises. And to connect with you guys, to keep in touch. I'd love that. Thank you so much. Great time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. And this is exactly what I told Bear when we first booked you. And we were actually supposed to have you earlier and we had some stuff, but this has actually been perfect divine timing. And I told him, hey, we got another regular here. We typically find certain individuals that we have great synchronicity with and resonance with. And it's every 6 months or something. We only do a show once every Thursday, but love to have you back on, man. Maybe we do it, every quarter or every 6 months, because you just are a fountain of knowledge and you're a true renaissance man. Like you're doing a lot. And you're very much
Thanks,
like us,
man.
so and an entrepreneur and doing all the things that way. So really appreciate you, brother. And so stoked to finally get you on the show, guys. Go check out his websites again; they're in the show notes below. And next Thursday, we're going to continue the Steiner talk with the voice of Steiner, Dale Brunsvold, will be on the show.
I'm really interested to, I've listened to so many of his narratives. I'm interested to see what he looks like and if he sounds like that when he talks, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, he's literally the voice, when you listen to the YouTube channel. Moshe, of all the
Oh
Steiner
yeah, the guy
talks.
that translates all the old text. Oh,
Yeah.
that guy is fantastic. I appreciate that guy and his thoroughness. Like he'll be like, excuse me, let me read that again because he didn't quite get it right in his reading. Like, love his teaching. And he's made these incredible lectures available.
Yeah.
I've gotten so much. Like I didn't know the depth of Steiner's brilliance until
Yeah.
I listened to him. So I actually would like to check that out. I'll just join your channel next week.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Dale's phenomenal. And we were connected through Steiner to God. Thank you. Thank you for that. And he's been with the Alfa Vedic community for a long time. And that'll be a great chat. So guys, see you next Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go show Mother Nature some love, go hug a tree for heaven's sakes. And we'll see you next time. Love you. Peace, guys.
Peace.